This is the Blank Dive Show. For creators who don't wait for clarity, they move anyway. This isn't about perfection. It's pressure, doubt, deadlines, and building something real with limited resources. It's about momentum when motivation runs out, mindset when the noise gets loud, and making the work, especially when it's uncomfortable. Through raw conversations with filmmakers, writers, musicians, artists, and curators, we talk about showing up, breaking barriers, and turning ideas into action. This is the dive into the unknown, no permission, no safety net, just the work.
Yeah, baby.
Hey, what's good, everybody?
Episode 2, people. Episode 2.
Here we are.
Deuce.
We got a really exciting episode tonight. Broken pencils and scrap paper. We are going to be diving deep into the topics of writing. All three of us hosts here have experiencing the craziness of writing and all that comes with it, whether that's writer's block, whether that's stalling out, and whether that's just starting from scratch. So, how you guys doing tonight? How you feeling?
Good, Ben. Just, relaxing. Been a kind of a chill day. How about you, Benny? How's your day been going?
I've been doing pretty good. It was a little bit of a long day. I think I hurt my shoulder yesterday, but it's feeling better.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Yes, very good.
Oh.
So, a lot of us are wondering, we were talking about topics that we should do on this podcast, and to me, near and dear to me is writing. Prior to me ever becoming, an actor or a director, writing was always my first passion.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel like it's the ultimate medium of creation. You're building a world, whatever that may be. Whether it's writing a poem or a song, or writing your
Books,
next story.
Anything. Yeah,
It's just the ultimate thing. But time and time again, I'm sitting there and I don't know where to begin or where to end with a story. And often I get myself shoehorned into a little corner of writing because I go down a narrow path. I like to excite myself. I don't always write an outline of where the story is going to go, which is a bad idea. And sometimes, characters will be killed off that shouldn't be. I'll regret not in that, or I'll write something that it's like, oh, this is politically incorrect. I can't do that, and I can't do this, and it comes into play of all those things that hold us back, and we bite our tongues in a way.
Yeah, for sure.
We talked about it in the first episode a little bit, censorship and self-doubt, and I really do believe that a lot of those things come into play when you're writing anything.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it definitely.
I got I noticed throughout the years, particularly, when I write music, and I noticed throughout the years, going back as far as I could remember, that the style for sure has changed of music that I do. When I look at my music now, there's such a growth to it, because when I was younger, I spent a lot of time on the streets. I spent a lot of time, locked up. I was locked up for a long time. I actually wrote a lot of music when I was locked up, and I took it out into the world. When I got out, I ended up taking my music out, and I began to write a lot more. But the things I would write about, the situations I would write about, there was a lot of you could hear the depression in the music. There was very deep depression within the music. And then I would also, I listen to music, and I would try to, put in my music basically what was going on in the music industry, and that style. And it wasn't really me, it wasn't me. I was trying to fit in, you know what I mean? I knew I was good at writing. I knew how to, do music, create music, but it just wasn't me. And I've noticed throughout the years, my whole entire style of music has changed. I mean, you know my old stuff. I mean, from then till now. Yeah, I was very streets, and a lot of my old creations, you know, and but the more I look at it, it was such a self reflection of what was going on inside of me.
Yeah.
Music's always been that for me. It's been this dive into myself, this deep dive within, you know, because it comes out, you know, it comes out on the paper, and it comes out when you're on the microphone in front of, you know, crowds of people. You could hear it. You could hear the, you know, the internals, what's going on within, you know, and I appreciate that with all artists, you know, but I've noticed that with myself is that, you know, there's a drastic change from when I started to now. And you know, I do find that interesting, you know, about just the creation of music in itself, you know.
You know what you said that was interesting is how you used to write back then, and a little bit about influence. And I think a lot of the stuff we do, unknowingly to us, we're heavily influenced. There's times where I'm writing something, I'm like, man, this is like the best shit I've ever written. And then
Yeah.
I just happen to like watch a movie from the past that I might have skimmed through, and I'm like, those lines are awfully familiar. Like,
100%.
you know what I mean? Like I'm sure you felt like that. Like, it's really hard to be original nowadays, but we're
Yeah.
heavily influenced by the characters we see, the music we listen to, the books
Yeah.
we read, and you know, to be original, that is where I try very hard to make my works as original as possible, either the characters, the experiences in the book, and there's books or stories or whatever I'm writing, a screenplay, because I'm so afraid that someone out there is going to be like, this guy plagiarized that shit, and I don't want to hear that. You know, like it's not even just that. We're all influenced, but you really got to take it a little step further nowadays, because you know, talking about plagiarism,
You'd be
there's so many
surprised.
people, man.
Yeah. You'd be so surprised. Like in comedy, it happens so much. But then sometimes you hear this one joke and you're like, this is such a good joke. The other guy has almost the same exact joke. And it's like, there's
And
no
he
way
was
he
up before
plagiarized
you.
it. He lives in another state. How would he plagiarize it? I didn't post it online or anything. So what I do is I sometimes give it the benefit of the doubt, and then like I'll try to rework it and to make it my own, like more
Yeah.
unique, because it
Yeah,
happens so
difficult.
much.
Oh, it
Yeah.
does. But I will say this story though, you know, because it's a real thing, and like as crazy as we are going through writer's block and jumping through hoops to make our work happen, the worst thing you can do to a creator that's a writer is, you know, plagiarize their work. Truthfully, I've had it happen to me. You know, not even to name names or anything. I had a feature film that was made with my screenplay that I did not authorize, of something that I kind of wrote a story that wasn't up to par, and I had put to the side, and that story got in someone's hand. They liked it. They switched around a couple character names, and they made a feature-length film. It never ended up coming to the light because, you know, that there was filled with controversies and whatnot. But at the end of the day, that was my work. And sometimes the work we write, whether it's yours or not, you might never want it to see the light of day.
Yeah.
That
Absolutely.
story of mine wasn't up to par of what I wanted to do, if that makes sense. You know,
No,
have you guys
perfect
wrote
sense.
work that you don't want anyone to fucking see? Like, for real.
Yeah. To be honest, there's some music out there that I wish I could just, you know, wheel it back in. You know, and I mean that, man. I had an opportunity, and it's a shame. I was at, and I don't know if any of you's ever heard of Kingdom Bound. It's big. It's there, you know, it's throughout the whole country. It's Christian music, a lot of Christian music. I do a lot of Christian rap, you know, now in my life. Positive rap, Christian rap, whatever people call it, different things. Well, I was at Kingdom Bound, and I had tons of CDs, tons that I did, and I actually didn't like the work. I didn't like the work that I did, and it was this thing where I wanted to hand out my albums. You know, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation like that where you're excited, but you're real nervous about, like, the work that you have. You're excited, and I have this opportunity to hand my work out to thousands of people, which I did. And I regret that was such a regret because just the way the music was recorded, there was nothing quality about it. It was I was doing it on a penny budget, a dollar store budget, and it was bad. The cover was bad, the work was, the sound of it was terrible. It wasn't the lyrics, it was the sound sounded horrible. And I'm handing this out to all these people that, you know, potentially could have been a lot of new listeners. And now I look at it, I'm like, I probably lost forever those people,
Yeah.
that
That's true.
could have.
That's
It,
true. That's true.
yeah, I
That's one of the
know.
reasons that us as writers, we take our work seriously. And like,
Ah,
how many versions of my script are written before the movie gets made?
yeah,
A lot of people are under the impression that like once you hit that final, and a lot of people are, I hate to say it, like I know people that make films that as soon as they're done writing, they start announcing their project.
yeah,
Listen, listen, Shakespeare, you might not be up to par because
yeah,
there's got to be revisions and there's got to be,
yeah,
sometimes a second glance of eyes on your work. I feel
yeah,
at times it's not
yeah,
always necessary, but you should have other people look at your work just to pick out some of those potential flaws.
yeah,
You
Yeah,
know,
absolutely.
I
you
learned
know,
that the hard way. I
Yeah,
learned that the hard way. Crazy. When I wrote my first, not my first script, but one of my first scripts, I was like, I'm excited. I'm about to post. I'm about to do the casting and everything.
yeah,
And it was just like I read it back because eventually I didn't go through with it. I read it back and I was like, ah, this could have been better.
yeah.
well, I've done it. I've done it too. Whether I announce stuff that's like kind of half baked, and that's kind of like the whole revision process. Like when you're writing comedy, when you go on stage, like, do you kind of like rethink your jokes a few times before you go out there?
I done that almost every single time. I had this list of jokes written multiple times, like almost every time. And there's multiple times where I'll switch it up, or there's a few times where I just went in a completely different direction. I started making jokes up in my head because I was like, this is not even good enough. This is not good. What am I doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Well, that's
there's sometimes where you're happy about it, like, oh, that actually worked. And then there's other times where you crash and burn really badly. And I was like, maybe I should have went with the written jokes that I had planned.
Yeah, it's
you pull this out of your pocket. I'm telling. I'm telling you, I've had it happen too. I know I brought it up in the last episode a little bit, but with my editor for the last book, Reign of Grandeur, during the process, um, I thought I had written like the next George R. R. Martin story, and she was like, "Slow your horses. You still got a while to go. You know,
right in the heart.
you got a while to go. I mean, like." This doesn't make sense. This doesn't make any sense. These characters are inconsistent. This guy, was acting this way in this scene, and now he's that way. Like, it really makes you think about your work in a different light.
Oh yeah,
Um, to make it, especially if something's like long format, like a longer story, a longer screenplay. You might not even remember what you wrote. Like the
yeah,
little minute things, like, oh, if this character had, a knife in his pocket, where did he lose that knife when he was locked up, or blah 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 blah. Things that are like literally plot holes,
yeah.
things you might forget about when you're doing these long format type
How
stories are
many,
important.
how many, how many, how many projects? Okay, how many pages do you have that are just sitting idle? I mean, if you think about it, how many projects, how many things did you got written down that are sitting idly, balled up in a corner or stacked up in a corner somewhere, or like me, everywhere, like kind of all over the place, all this unfinished work that you say you're going to get back to, and that was your intention the whole time. I'm going to get back to this, and or you just stop for the day, and then it just you go, like for me, I go back in the studio and I'll write something down, and I'll be at it, and I'll get a verse down, and everything will be flowing. And then the next day when I go back in there, I turn the same beat on. I go back to my recording, and I'm like, nah, that ain't it. Yeah, I don't want to do that. And then I take the paper out. Usually I just take the paper out and I throw it. And I got paper all around me. And then I put a new beat on and I get back into the writing, into the right from the beginning. And I keep doing that. It's how many of them, how many of those you guys
I
got laying
can't even.
around?
I can't even tell you because that's the problem is with me is I don't write with even though this is called like broken pencils and scrap paper.
Yeah.
I haven't done scrap paper and pencils in
Yeah.
years.
No.
I don't even like the way pencils feel.
Yeah.
Like I
I
don't like
love writing on
nah, like I
Love it.
legitimately
Yeah.
all my stuff is digitally on the computer,
Yeah.
on hard drives. So I couldn't
Typing.
tell you how many things like there was actually when I wrote Metamorphosis, my book, that actually a lot of those segments came from another book that I was writing, but at the time I was fearful of releasing.
Yeah.
So I wrote a book called Forever Then, and I wrote 15 chapters of that book when I was like, I don't even know. I was young. I was like 15, 16 years old when I started writing it. And to remember what I wrote, because that was a fictional character with real life scenarios in it, I actually referenced Forever Then because they were real stories, but I had just changed the names and the locations of everything because at the time I wasn't ready to write like a personal bio,
Yeah.
but I couldn't tell you like that's just a piece of like the pie. And like for me, that's one of my biggest inspirations, whether it's a total fictional story or not, as I take pieces of my life and incorporate it into my art.
No,
If I'm writing a
absolutely.
song,
You
how do
ever
you
write
write music?
something?
Music? How do you write
Yeah,
music?
no, like Benny was asking something.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I was saying, like, how do you write music without it coming from a source of personal?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's I don't see it's hard for me to say that, and this might come off like controversial, but nowadays it's I listen to music, it's not the same as when we grew up. It's not. I could barely understand sometimes listening to music. I can barely understand what they're trying to even say. Um, it seems like the art of like storytelling is kind of diminished through and I know there's different ways that people do it nowadays, but for me, we grew up with, I grew up listening to Nas and Tupac, DMX, not as much Biggie Smalls, but I grew up listening to the storytellers, and just writing, that's kind of how I've always been myself. Is I like to tell a story, and it's interesting, but you like the bringing up like kind of unfinished projects, but then you go back to it and it becomes something. I mean, it's like that. The album, the Torn Pages project that I just dropped, my last album, and that was a compilation of all these different projects that I had throughout the years that I never finished. And what I ended up doing is I went through everything and I found all these old writings that I had and I put it all into an album, and I dropped the album, and it was just me finishing something I felt needed to be finished. It's like because you want that work you started for a reason, and then you just kind of forget about it. And it was kind of something, I should have named the album Unfinished Business. It's like because
Yeah,
it's kind of what it was. It was all unfinished work that I dropped the whole album with. I find
yeah.
that
I find writing too to be an interesting thing with me because before a lot of times with me you want an audience. You always want an audience. That's like the grand goal is to have somebody else appreciate your work. But at the same time, a lot of my writings I do for myself. I really do, because you're kind of preserving time in a way that and understand. And when you review your work, it's like you're cementing those words in whatever time, you know. Whether people pick them up or not, that's a bonus. But now I know from whenever I'm done, if I ever accomplish a project that's a writing project of what sort, whatever the screenplay, I can grab my work, open it up, and reflect on that what I was feeling at that particular time. And
yeah,
I think that is like to me, it's
like empowering. It's exciting. And like I said, that added bonus is getting, people to not just see the work. Maybe they'll appreciate it, but that idea of the reaction, it might not be a good reaction. It could be a bad reaction to whatever you're writing, but it's a reaction nonetheless. And that, I think, is truly freaking powerful. But I wanted to bring up one other topic before we dig too deep here. What is your thoughts? Now, I have a lot of thoughts on this with AI writing.
I don't like it. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
It's so crazy now. Like, just to give you like an example, like it takes a while for most people to write a novel.
Yeah.
And I was noticing somebody I know, they were like publishing like 8 books within like a few months span. And they were publishing them on Amazon, like, self-publishing, but there's nothing wrong with that, or wherever else, Ingram Sparks. And they were like pushing them everywhere, like 8 books, like long books.
Yeah.
And, I happened to support the person by purchasing a book and taking a look through it. And I could tell by like the first few pages of writing that a human being, flesh and blood,
did not
write that shit. They didn't write it. It was not a person. That was a computer. And it was like a computer that was programmed to try to think like a human being. Or what would a human say in this situation?
It's wild.
Any type of cliche you can possibly think of, AI writing picks up in a story to make it like funny or unique, or to make the plot move faster.
Yeah.
It is just absolutely insane what AI is doing, but it's also making artists, I think, lazy and don't want to think outside the box. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I look up things using AI. I'll write an email using AI, but am I writing creative writing and taking it as my own? Absolutely not. But don't even.
What if people use it for? Because I know they do, but how do you feel about people using it for like editing and stuff like that?
Well, that's different. That to me is different. I'm like, for example, like this podcast. This podcast is natural. We created this. We're creating the content. We're interviewing the artists. But you can use AI to an advantage to like cut clips to advertise. That's an advertising bonus of AI. There's different things you can do with AI that is positive, but as far as writing has such significance on what people view, like value, like think about it. Like if every word that came out of my mouth was programmed by AI, then like, am I responsible for that, or is the AI? Like, who's getting the golden star for this quality episode that we're watching right now?
It's
yeah,
kind of taken away.
Take it as their own.
It's taken it. It takes away creativity for sure. I mean, look at some of the apps. I mean, realistically, look at some of the apps that are out right now. You got all these apps, and I mean, I see them all the time, because I always search up different beats and everything. So the algorithm picks that up, and now they're shoving all these apps in my face constantly. But basically, you give them an idea. Like you jump on this app and you give them an idea of what you want to talk about, and it literally will record. Like it'll record your voice, so it can pick up how you sound. And then it could take these ideas you have and make a whole, like, write lyrics with it. That it's not me. I'm just giving it an idea, and I'm putting this idea in this robot's, in this bot's brain of it, and it runs with it, and then it could create songs, and then I could put that out there, and put it out on the shelves and be like, yo, this is me, but it's not. It's so lame, and it's a cheating, it's so much cheating going on with AI, and it does have its positives.
Don't view it that way. There is a lot of people that don't view it that way. I know it because I've had conversations with people who are like, this is the wave of the future, work smarter, not harder. No, writing is from the heart. You know? In every character, whether you love the characters or not, there's a reason why they exist. Whether that poem, there's a reason why that poem exists, that lyric and that song, that comedy. especially that comedy too. I think a lot of people are running to AI right now and generating stuff because a lot of comedy is of the times. So, you know, you want to keep a relevant comedy and you're like, oh man, I really don't want to think too deep and I don't want to use something that's been used before. They'll generate a you know, a joke using modern day whatever's going on.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is it's replicating something that's came before as well. And we all have those influences, but AI is literally, in a way, plagiarizing. They're plucking a little bit from this guy, a little bit from that guy, and they're creating something that's quote unquote unique. I don't know. It's a unique conversation. I think that over time, we're going to see more and more artists that are like, you know, I forget what it was. Like this is a separate topic, but it's actually not. Anybody know the famous producer Timbaland?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I know what you're talking about.
He's the first producer to publish or to basically push an AI artist.
Yeah.
And that AI artist has AI beats, AI visuals, and AI lyrics. Every word that comes out of that artist is generated by some computer format.
With 8 billion plus people on this planet.
Yes, 8 billion people, and he is investing millions into a robot artist when there's somebody out there struggling that is so talented, willing to make it. And I personally believe we should be pushing people and not robots. And with that said, before we go too deep into tonight, I think we need to jump into the guest of the hour, Andrew Matthews. This guy is a legend, okay? All right? He is a legend. You know what? Round of applause. This guy is a legend. One more time. Hey, Andrew, what's going on?
Hey.
He is an actor, director, screenwriter, author, playwright. He's sexy. You got it. How you doing, Andrew? What's going on?
Good. How are you guys? Thanks for inviting me. It's good to be here.
Thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
So thanks for joining the conversation. We really want to jump on things head first, dive right into this writing process. I know you got a lot of different writing projects going on currently, and just let us know a little bit about what's your most recent work and what's going on with it.
The most recent work I've been working on for a few years, it's called His Name Was Ebby. It was originally, I got the idea from the recovery community. There's a fellow by the name of Ebby Thatcher, who's from Albany, New York, where, as you know, I relocated to recently. So the story came even more to life for me. So Ebby Thatcher got sober in the Oxford group way back in the 1930s and brought the message of recovery to Bill Wilson, who turned that into Alcoholics Anonymous, which this past year celebrated 90 years in existence of helping people get sober. But Ebby could not stay sober himself. Yes, hats off to AA, all the lives it saved, including mine and other people in my family and many others I know. So while he did such a great thing, he just couldn't sustain his sobriety throughout his life. He just had episodes of sobriety and falling off the wagon. And it's kind of I guess it's like an anti-hero story.
Yeah. And it sounds like it's in a way a tragedy.
It is a tragedy that he didn't really take hold of the principles that he passed on to Bill and really saved so many lives, and he couldn't do it himself. And he had a kind of a sad existence. You know, he had a lot of ups and downs. He spent time in Albany, he spent time in Vermont, he spent time in New York City, he spent time in Dallas, Texas. But at the end of his life, it seemed like he might have looked back and thought this was a wasted life almost, except for that one thing he did. And Bill Wilson always gave him credit. He always called Ebby his sponsor. Now, if you know anything about AA and recovery, a sponsor is somebody who's sober and, has a good foundation. Ebby did not have that, but Bill always gave him credit. Bill really felt that he saved his life. And because of that, that's why AA started. So to me, the story is really important. I got a lot of the information from a book, a Hazelton book. I don't know if I should have said that, Hazelton. And I originally wrote a play during COVID. And I wrote a bunch of plays during COVID, but I was like, well, what am I going to do with these plays? There's no live theater anywhere. I did a few Zoom things, but Zoom and a live play are two totally different things. So then I started working on the film version of the script, and that took a while to get done, but I finished it up last year. I had a reading. I've been, scouting locations. I've been casting. I've been thinking about fundraising, and I thought I had a few leads that have kind of dried up, but I'm not going to give up. I'm going to tell the story because everybody I tell it to, especially people in recovery, even people outside of recovery, say it's a great story. So it's generated a lot of interest. And especially up here, there's Thatcher Park, which is from the Thatcher family that Ebby came from. So it's a well-known name. His family was involved in politics in the early part of the century. He still has some relatives up here. They've given me their blessing. So I'm about ready to get off to the races with this project called His Name Was Ebby.
It sounds really powerful stuff, man.
Sure does.
So what was it? What is it about this story in particular that you said, listen, I could write anything in the world. You're sitting there in your house and you're laid back, you're relaxing. You could write anything you want to write. And you chose to tell this true story, adapt this true story. What was about it that really drew you to it?
Well, first of all, for me, I'm a person in long-term recovery. I owe a lot to 12 steps, a lot to AA. I did a Bill W. one-man show for about 10 years. I must have did about 100 performances of that show. And I really got to know the man, Bill Wilson. And there was a big part, and the turning point of the story is when Ebby comes to visit Bill. So I sort of acted that out even in my solo show, just the conversation they have. But there's been so much written about Bill. There's been there's been biographies, there's been documentaries. Dr. Bob's another famous figure from Akron, Ohio. But people seem to forget about Ebby. But the fact of the matter is, if there was no Ebby, there'd be no Bill, there'd be no Dr. Bob, there probably would be no AA. So I really felt this was a story that needed to be told. It's not a glamorous success story that he went on to live a fabulous life. He struggled. He struggled day to day, week to week, year to year. He had stretches of sobriety, but he ultimately would, fall back into drinking and into that, horrendous, lonely lifestyle, and just, and it's just, it's just one of those things. If you're in recovery, you might know someone who never really got it. And it's a sad story.
Yeah.
But this guy is such an important figure in the history of recovery because, like I said, without him, AA wouldn't have happened.
Wow.
Yeah, for sure. Andrew, now I've met you a few times. I always liked you. Your personality, you're funny at times, and well, you're funny, but at times you're funny, you show it. And the last time I seen you, we were at the castle at the book event.
Yes.
And I seen you sell your book. I'm going to let you introduce your book.
Sold out his book.
Sold out. But I also watched you give a speech, and I seen the emotion, the human being, behind the story. And we were talking about that a little bit in the show, that our stories, and our art and how we do things. And tell us a little bit about, that moment, I guess. Your book is being, you're releasing your book and it sells out pretty quickly. And, you speak to everybody. But again, I seen the emotion, okay, I guess take us back to that place, like, where were you at?
Now yes, that book I wrote was called My Dad Goes to Meetings, and it's really geared toward kids. And, if you've heard my story, it's no secret. My story begins and ends with my father. My father was an alcoholic. His father was an alcoholic and a gambler. I grew up in an alcoholic home, became an alcoholic myself, caught it at a very young age, saved myself years of who knows what, and got sober at a young age. But I kind of look back and wondered what happened if my dad got sober when I was a kid. And I sort of took that point of view from a kid's eyes, seeing his dad drink and then seeing his dad getting sober and seeing his dad going to AA meetings. Now, AA is anonymous. I probably shouldn't be saying I'm a member of AA, but at this point, I've put it out there. It's just who I am. So I don't feel like I'm may or may not be violating a tradition. I apologize, but this is my story, and it's important to tell because I really feel like if you're able to get to kids and prevent them from suffering, alcohol and drug abuse, and even better, if you get to the parents to help the kids not turn to alcohol and drugs, then you've saved 2 lives.
Absolutely.
But my story is such that I got sober. My father got sober shortly thereafter. And I really felt in my family, my history is that the chain has been broken for the most part.
Wow.
And that's a miracle after 3 generations of alcoholism in my family.
That's
Yeah.
that's really awesome. Like when I was doing my meetings, one of the things I kept hearing when everyone would share is that they started at a young age. And I was just surprised. I was like, you did what at a young age? Like, every person, even myself in a way, I started at a young age and I didn't even realize it. I was like, wait, I guess I'm supposed to be here. I was so like conflicted and like, how did this even start? My parents don't drink. My grandparents don't drink, or maybe they did when they were younger. I'm not really sure. But I was like, how did this all happen? And it can be so confusing at times. And just hearing different stories of how people start when they're young.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think it was
Yeah,
an interesting perspective, because this is coming from someone who's never dabbled into drugs or alcohol. But from my point of view, reading it as the child, as an adult reading as the child, it was very interesting because I grew up in a home that had addiction in it. And that's kind of where I felt coming through. So it's a very interesting perspective for a children's book. And I think that's what really made it unique and special.
Oh, for sure. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
And it's really for kids to be read either by kids or for kids, because I looked into it before I was already writing the book, but I decided to look into, are there other books like that? And there were some, but a lot of them were geared toward the parents talking to the kids about it. But this is like the kid telling his story from the kid's point of view, and it remains that point of view through the whole story.
Absolutely.
It's a kid's book. It's a children's book for children. So that I thought was rare in and of itself to address that topic from a kid's point of view.
For sure. I just asked that question, just because I kind of know you. You kind of shared it, and we kind of have a similar story. And I know I talked to you a little bit, but we're not going to get into that. We're going to get into who growing up, like, you're into movies, you're into writing. Was there anyone that inspired you? Like, was there anybody that inspired you as an artist into what you do today? Doing the things you do. Any book writers or directors or?
I mean, for me, I was a cut up in high school. I was busy getting in trouble, smoking weed and drinking. So I didn't do anything really creative outside of getting in trouble. I did some really creative bad things to get myself in trouble.
Yeah.
But when I got sober at a young age, I got to give credit to Orange County Community College, because that's when I started, taking classes. I took some writing classes. There was a few professors there that really inspired me to write stories and read and actually study as a student. But it took me a while to really get into my own writing. It wasn't until years later. I mean, I was pursuing my acting career and auditioning and acting. And, you know, I always watched, you know, you always watch what goes on a set, on a stage. And, you know, after a while, I thought, well, maybe I could do that. And I picked up a couple of scripts. I did a couple of plays that I directed and acted in. And eventually I started writing my own stuff. And it just kind of flourished from there. And the other thing that really kind of changed things for me, because I was so much into theater and writing plays, was COVID. It was like a dead end. It was like,
Yeah.
you know, at one point, you know, we all thought this is never going to end. So I was like, I got to find a different venue here, man. So I started taking some screenwriting classes and converted some of my plays into films, and then just have been working on screenplays ever since. I still do some plays. I still like the theater.
No,
And it's much, I don't want to say easier, but it's much less expensive to produce a play than a film. But as you know, a play is up for a week or two and it's gone, unless you know, get on Broadway for 2 years. But, you know, a film lives on forever. So that's the caveat there. That's the bonus right there. You can write a
You're in
screenplay.
several. You are in several.
special.
Yeah, it lasts. It lasts. So
Do you feel like, you know, as a writer having your work published, do you feel like in a way, once you have that story, right, and now you're binded to it, do you feel like you are in a way forever changed by the work that you create? And you know, do you feel like a sense of responsibility now with your work to get it out there?
Well, I definitely feel a sense of accomplishment, and I like getting my work out there. This past summer, I had one play produced at a festival. I had another play slash film that was produced at HB Studios in the city, where I was a student for a long time. So that was very satisfying. But yeah, I kind of do feel a responsibility to like keep writing, keep telling these stories, especially the recovery stories. I just picked up another well-known AA story, The Man in the Bed, which is about Bill D, alcoholic number 3. And I did this play years ago, and I recently converted into a screenplay and added a little bit more to it. So I've been working on that, because these recovery stories, I think, are important to tell, because what's happening, in my opinion, nowadays with treatment and recovery, it's all about harm reduction. It's all about reducing your use, which, listen, whatever works for whatever person. But I think the real recovery that I was raised with is starting to disappear. And I think it's important to tell these stories of people that found their path of recovery through abstinence and not drinking and putting everything down. And that's just me. And that's the stories I want to tell. And they're kind of historical. I don't know if you want to say outdated, but these are like the predecessors. These are like the people that paved the path for where we are today. So I think it's important to tell these stories, and I'll probably keep telling them for a while until somebody says not to. I don't know if that'll happen, but
you never know. And like, nowadays, I feel like it is very possible. I think, you know, to get your work out there and push it as far as you possibly can with all the media outlets they have now. I'm excited to see where it goes. And with that said, like, you know, when you're writing and you put something out there that's so personal at the same time as historical, is there anything like in your personal life that you feel like is possibly affected or could be affected from the work that you put out?
I mean, I wrote a play called Home Testing, which was loosely based on a relationship I was in a few years ago. And I didn't really change the names. I didn't really change the circumstances.
Oh my God.
But it was definitely a comedy of something that could have happened that didn't happen. So I don't know if that, and I was told by an entertainment lawyer that you should probably get permission before you tell this story, because if you tell it and this person finds out and doesn't like it, you could be like sued. And I was like, oh, okay. But I thought that phone call was never going to go well.
Oh my God.
So I did it anyway. I have a couple of those stories that I've written, and I have changed the names. If you knew me, you might say, oh, I know that story, but you'd have to know me pretty well to know that story. So
No.
I guess there could be some
Yeah, I
possible
could definitely
ramifications.
relate there. I had to do that with my own story. I had to change all the names because I was heavily told you just never know. This could come to bite you, even if you're 100% honest. They might not like the way they're depicted in this. But it's even that,
I
it's the idea that people all have a different interpretation of the time of what actually happened, or whatever you were thinking when you were writing it could be much different than in that moment of what they felt, and that's when you hit
Oh,
that
that's for sure. That's
that
for sure.
craziness.
Yes, that's for sure.
Andrew, a little bit of you are older than I am, all of us here. So,
Probably.
when you hit lows in your creativity, when you hit some lows, what is it you do or find helpful that that brings you out of those lows? I mean, because I think everybody, including myself, could use a little bit of advice at times. And what do you do in those times where you're at a low?
Well, for me, I fall back on my recovery. I fall back on meetings. I fall back on my support group. I look at my accomplishments. I kind of try to pat myself on the back and say, "You've done this. You can do more." You just have to keep going. One thing I try to do, and I have to be honest, I've been slacking lately, but is write every day. Write every day, even if it's a page, even if it's a scene, even if it's for 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, one page. Sometimes what I've done, if I have nothing that I'm working on or nothing's coming to me, I'll pick up something and rewrite it. Like this, The Man in the Bed was a play. I said, let me turn this into a film script. And that got me going again to start writing. So now I have other ideas are popping into my head. Like, I don't want to say it too loud. My brother's staying with me. So he's he's a little bit older than me. So he remembers more of what happened to us as kids.
Yeah.
And the ideas are just coming with me now, like, rekindling these memories. And I wrote a bunch of plays about my dad, about my mom, about my kids. And, it's just stuff that it's almost therapeutic in a way where you can relive a moment. You can change history. You can change history in your mind. What I did, I lost my mom at a young age, which kind of put me on the path to recovery. There were so many things that happened, but that was the first thing. So anyway, I lost my mom in a car accident years ago. She left the house. I never saw her again. And I wrote a play about having a conversation with her before she left. That never happened. That
Yeah.
conversation never
That's
happened. But I
deep.
played that
That's
out in
deep,
my
man.
mind so many times. And you put it on paper and you're like, wow, that could have
You're
happened.
like,
That it's like reliving your history. It's kind of like rewriting your life in a way. You can write
Wow.
whatever. You're in charge of your world when you're writing.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done a ton of things. I've made a ton of things happen on a piece of paper or a laptop that hasn't happened, may never happen, but it happened in my world, and I made it happen myself.
I appreciate that, man. That wisdom. I appreciate that. I figured I'd throw that question out there for you, man. I appreciate that. That's some good advice.
Well,
so
Pat yourself on the back, man, and keep moving.
have you ever written something and it's pretty good, pretty decent, but like another thought pops in your head and you're like, this might be a different story, or like I could use this in the other story I was writing before? Have you ever did that?
yeah, like I've written some things. Like there were a couple of like these relationship stories where the main character, which is always based on me, ends up like captured in like a captured by the ex-girlfriend. Like like a couple. I'm like, why does this story always end up with me getting caught in something and I can't get out?
By an
So
ex.
I went with that where the character kind of breaks out and breaks free. So I don't know if that was subliminal or subconscious or whatever it was, but
I
just went with
totally
it.
hear you though. I'm like,
Well,
I'm just writing and then something, I'm like, no, this has to go over here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Put
Yeah,
Not
their
to change,
thing together.
not to change gears too quick, but I just wanted to bring this up before I forgot. But a few years back, I was writing this little ditty, little short film called Lovelock, and Andrew played my father, and I just figured, I just don't know why I wanted to show this.
How dare you talk about her legs? She gets those from her mama.
I just wanted to play that clip, but yeah, she gets it from her mama. So all this, you never know why you write. You never know why you write certain things, but ultimately, I think it's to bring us back through time or to gauge some sort of emotion from people. So now, with that said, like, what if no one was to read your work moving forward? Would you still write?
Of course, definitely. I would still keep writing, because when I'm not writing, when I'm not doing something creative, whether it's acting, writing a film, screenplay, play, even, I haven't written any books since the kids' book, but if I'm not doing anything, I feel like I'm not doing anything. Like, I can go to work, I can go to the gym, I can do this, I can do that. But if I don't have a creative outlet, I feel like something's missing. You got to be working on something almost all the time. Because if you take a couple of days off, that can roll in the other direction. You start to be like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow.
It's funny. It's kind of funny that you brought this up, because we actually brought it up like the other night. We were talking about taking breaks from, like, if you need to take a break from art or whatever. And we were kind of having an internal struggle, because some people need that break to get back onto a different path or to re-energize themselves. But I kind of fit that role that if I stop, this is the thing that brings me the most joy. Like, why would I want to take a break from something like that brings me such happiness? It's not like taking a break from work, you're 9 to 5. It's taking a break from something that brings you peace and harmony in the universe to me. So it's kind of funny that you brought that up, that, could make you feel that way.
Yeah, there's nothing better than writing a couple of pages and feel like, okay, I took another step today. That's good. Pat yourself on the back. Do it again tomorrow.
Absolutely. So that's good advice to the, pat yourself on the back every once in a while.
That's great advice. Great.
Everybody give yourself a little pat on the back. All right. Diggy, there we go.
That's it. Everybody, come on.
Pat on the back. So what, I don't want to go on all night, but what I do want to ask you, Andrew, and let's hit you with this final question, is what's next?
What's next for me is probably a story about me and my roommate brother, because so many memories are flooding back. So many things have happened in our life so long ago, but it feels like yesterday when you're rekindling those memories. So that's my next project, that I'm going to write a story about me and him. Probably that's my next venture.
Great. We look forward to it. And
great one.
Where can people find your book currently if they want to pick up a copy?
My book is self-published. My dad goes to meetings. I have copies I can readily get to anybody and anywhere. I sold a bunch. I gave away a bunch when I first wrote it, because I just felt like I want to get this story out to people, not just people that need it, but really kids that need it. I probably gave away, like, I don't know, 100 books early on. I just gave them away to people. I said, if you want to pay me, fine. Some did, some didn't. And then when I went to the castle, I sold a bunch, and I sold a bunch more since then. But you can contact me directly, Andrew Gerard Matthews at Gmail, and I'll get you a book.
Amazing.
Yes, for sure. Well, definitely appreciate you, man. It's good to to sit back and get to conversate with you, again, and we hope that get you back on and do it again. This has been fun, and I'll be taking some of your advice as well, for sure. I appreciate that, man. Pat yourselves on the back, and and realize the things that you have accomplished, and move forward.
Sounds like a
It's
working
good to
title.
see you guys, and thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Sure.
Thank you. Talk soon.
Loved having you.
So everybody, we got an awesome episode. Hope you enjoyed it. So we are going to be moving on to episode 3 next Thursday at 7 p.m. You do not want to miss it. This is blocks in the road. You know, we're going to be talking a lot about things that get in the way, how to get over them. And we're going to have a guest next week as well. You don't want to miss it. And like always, if you want to come on this show, you know what to do. theblankdive@gmail.com. Hit us up. We'd love to talk with you.
Like, share, and subscribe.
Dive
Sure.
in.